The IA role is multifaceted, and one of our many duties is to serve as the writing assistant or tutor for the students. This campus hires tutors for many subjects, and writing tutors are actually hired by the university and work for a wage. The IA is something of a stand-in writing assistant, who only meets with the students a few times during the quarter. Let us be clear. We work with students on their papers, we give them advice, and we help them revise their writings. Unfortunately, most IAs are also not writing assistants, so most of us don't have the benefit of attending a weekly tutoring course and learning how to tutor as the other hired writing assistants do. This is my crash course on effectively filling the position of the IA as writing assistant. Since you're only meeting with the students a couple of times during the quarter, you've got to make the best of your time with them. At minimum, you've got half an hour to work with the student on his or her paper, so get right to work. Now, I've already assumed that your student actually brought a paper to the writing tutoring conference, but any writing assistant knows that there will be times when students don't bring their papers, usually because it has not yet been written. If this happens, the writing tutoring conference has already been diluted of most of its potential for helping the student. Hopefully, the student has at least done the assigned reading. If they have, don't let them leave the session without having written something. Free writes are perfect for this situation, but I usually like to have them do that outside of their own time with me. It's also a good idea to have a discussion about the text, but it has to be tangible for their papers. By this I mean use the prompts, use the text, and use their unique perspectives. If they didn't like the book, have them say why. But most importantly, don't let them leave the session without having written something. If a student shows up to a session without an essay and without having done the reading, I reschedule the session for a later date and send them to go do it. Their time and your time is too valuable to spend even a half an hour making vague statements about text. So hopefully, your student shows up to the writing conference with a paper, a prompt, text, and something to write with. These are the basic student components of an effective writing conference, and I make it clear that this is what is expected of them every time we meet. Now, I have a fundamental structure for all of my writing conferences. 1. Does the student have any basic questions that don't have anything to do with the essay? Usually, they don't. 2. Have the student read the essay aloud, pen in hand, marking things to comment on as they go. I like to have the student print out a separate copy of their essay for me, so I can follow along with them as they read theirs. Both IA and student should be making corrections and noting things for discussion. I guarantee that the student will find typographical and orthographical errors as they read out loud. As an IA, I make sure to mark essay points for correction and discussion, as well as essay points that are good. Letting the students know that they are good writers, because they are, makes their reception of criticism easier. Be as specific as you can when critiquing an essay. Vague comments, like the high school favorite show, don't tell, are unhelpful. One good way to produce specific criticism is to recall that every sentence in an essay has a relationship with the sentence before it and the sentence after it. A good question to ask yourself is that relationship fractured or even non-existent? Right. Among other good questions to ask your students, what is your thesis? Tell me in one sentence, maybe two, but don't read it off your paper. What are your paragraph topics and how do they support the thesis? What evidence do you have to back up your claims? Are the introduction and conclusion paragraphs echoes of the same paragraph, or does the conclusion take the essay somewhere new? Does the essay even answer the prompt? Perhaps the biggest problem that students have with their essays deals with thesis. Often, students don't even have a working definition of thesis. They may be producing theses that are simply a main idea of some sort, but that lack any critical discussion or analysis of the topic of their paper. Students may be writing the 5-paragraph essay, which is perfect for the advanced placement exams and totally inappropriate here. Students need a new paradigm from which they can discuss and write multi-dimensional essays, and I found lots of help in what I call the column system. What's great about the column system is that it can represent not only what students need to change or do more of in a paper, but also what they lack completely. It's almost stupidly simple. Each column represents a different layer of analysis of a text. Each one is more complex than the last, and they all depend on each other, so none of them exist in a vacuum. The idea is that every paragraph of a student's essay should have elements from all 3 columns represented. In order to make a point, a student has to have something to be making a point about, evidence for that point, and analysis of that point. Column 1 refers to the textual reference. This is the most elemental portion of any paragraph. Students need to use the text as fodder for analysis. If a student's essay does not have adequate or appropriate evidence, point them to this column and ask them what they lack and what they need to use more of to support their argument. Column 2 refers to the topics of a paper. Topics in a paper are essentially defined by the use of paragraphs, so each paragraph should have a clearly defined topic. It's essentially a laundry list. However, it's not the same as thesis. The thesis is rather the result of a grand or overarching topic combined with opinion and analysis. Column 3 refers to the opinion and analysis of the paper. It's the how and the why. This is the part of a paper usually most deficient in students' essays, probably because opinion is exactly what they've been trained to leave out of their high school essays. What do I mean by analysis and opinion?
Maybe you mean that it's the job of the student, as a critic, to analyze the function of whatever it is that they're studying.
Right. Thank you, Kalen. For example, in an essay on gender inequalities expressed by an author's treatment of gendered characters in a text, a student must analyze how those inequalities are created. Simply pointing out that they exist and that this is a bad thing is not sufficient for our purposes. Questions to ask concerning column 3: how does this happen in function? Why does it happen in function? To what end or for what purpose does it happen in function? And why is this important at all? I draw the column system on paper for the students and ask them to diagnose their own essays. Do they have clear topics? Are they providing accurate and adequate textual reference? Are they making statements about the hows and the whys of whatever it is that they're analyzing? The column system provides a way of thinking about essays and analysis that most students haven't seen.
Students need to see that the texts are simply a means to the end of learning how to exercise critical analysis. I equate analysis with opinion to a degree, and I often find that students have trouble voicing their opinions in class. However, the content of the course isn't as relevant as the critical theory from which students learn to analyze text. We must therefore change the focus of our sections from topics for analysis to methods of analysis.
Now, don't be blinded by our basketball moves.
By now, hopefully, you have a clear understanding of your role as an IA.
We're here to teach analysis, not run a summer camp.
Activities are fun, and they break the monotony of week-to-week analysis, but don't let them monopolize your section time.
Remember, you've got a job to do.
Neutralize the red menace. Name names if necessary.
Oh, David. I'll say again, you've been drafted for a reason. You're good at analysis, and you're good at writing.
And you got moxie.
Right. So, with that, we pass the ball to you.
Ow! Shit! That